When Jeremy walks into number 10, it's a shame that Narendra won't be there. Narendra will be there. He'll be coming in with us when we go into government next time. We're celebrating all different aspects of his life. I want to talk about, just for a couple of minutes, a short period of maybe 5 or 6 years in Narendra's life, which was so important to us all. At the end of the 70s and into the early 80s, the mid-80s itself, the period of the GLC, when I first really came across Narendra, because we'd all gone through, we were in our 20s, we'd gone through that experience in London at the different campaigns in the mid to late 70s. Grunwick was mentioned on the picket lines of Grunwick, in the various campaigns against the National Front and the fascists in London, and we were looking to see where we went from there as a movement, individuals looking to see how we could change the world. And some of us gathered together, and Narendra was part of this, around publications like Briefing and others, Diane, the same, looking to see what aspect of the movement that we could use, whether it was the trade union movement or other aspects of the campaign. And one aspect of it was, we seized upon, was local government. We thought that local government could be a vehicle for us to test our ideas out, implement policies, change people's lives. And it was a concept we developed which was about in and against the state. And the idea was the state is a set of institutions. Of course it is. It's also a relationship for working class people, usually of dominance, especially if you were black. And so therefore the theory was you go within the state and you change the relationship in and against the state. And that's what we did. We decided that Thatcher was elected in 1979, and so the GLC elections were the first real election after her being elected, and one way of opposing Thatcherism was to actually stand therefore for election, or if you weren't standing for election, to become an officer within local government, to be a civil servant within local government, and in that way working together to change that relationship of dominance. And that's how I first met Narendra, because what we tried to do, and the difference between elected member or appointed official was almost irrelevant. We were just part of a movement, a team to transform the world and to test the ideas out. It was in the areas like the GLC that eventually, yes, we would stand for election for Parliament, and eventually we'd put them into practice in government. And that's what we did during the GLC period, and Narendra was a key element of that. And sometimes they've rewritten history. We need to start rewriting it again accurately this time. Because what we decided that we would open up County Hall to everyone, anyone who had an idea who could, well, change lives to the better. And Narendra was part of that. And I remember night after night at County Hall, Narendra and all of us being involved in meetings from one end of County Hall to another, and people discussing a whole range of things. If you remember, we were discussing policing and what was happening, particularly to young black people on the streets of London at that point in time. So we set up a police committee to try and hold the police to account. We wanted to transform people's lives as basics, bread and butter issues, which was about transport, reducing fares, allowing people to travel, older people for free, other people on a cheap basis to get them to work. And the areas in which Narendra was particularly interested in was around popular planning and the development of an accountable and democratic economy which served the whole community, tackling unemployment by making sure that people were properly paid and, yes, had a say when they went to work, and developing of cooperatives and others. All these ideas buzzing. That Narendra was, I think, one of the, and this is a word we don't often use in our movement, one of the most professional implementing policies, because in those days it wasn't just a matter of coming up with an idea. This is what Narendra was good about. It was about translating that idea into a report, and yes, making sure it was legally unchallengeable, because at committee after committee we were being legally challenged by right-wing front organisations to prevent us implementing the policies, to make sure, this was Narendra's point really, to make sure you don't just have good ideas, you make sure you deliver them. But also in delivering them, you recognise that you have to build up popular support for them. And that's why one of the essential qualities around Narendra was not just having ideas, not just being professional at implementing, but being able to convince people of those ideas and mobilise people in the campaigns for them. And in that period from 1979, when we said the target would be the GLC, from 81 when we were elected, and then he was involved in the implementation of our policies, right through to 86 when we were abolished. To be frank, it was like a renaissance in London. Some of you are old enough to remember that, the buzz that there was. And it was dealing with issues that were never previously confronted. Yes, we were tackling racism. We had Race Equality Committee, but also LGBT. We funded the first LGBT organisation funded by the state, was funded by the GLC. Can you remember? Some of you may remember, Narendra was working with me. We did a tour because we wanted peace in Ireland, so we did a tour of Sinn Féin councillors. Alex Maskey was one of them. Alex Maskey came and toured round. Alex went back to Belfast and was shot 4 times. Later became the mayor of Belfast. We were laying the foundations of a dialogue about peace that actually, eventually, I believe, contributed to peace in Ireland. Narendra was a key element of that discussion and implementation of those ideas and those policies. And of course, they were extremely popular in the Daily Mail. That tsunami that was thrown at us by the capitalist press, the Evening Standard at the time in particular, attacking everything that we stood for. And that's when you discovered who your real comrades were. Those ones that were always had your back. And Narendra always had our backs in whatever struggle we were in, because that was the nature. You discovered those that would stand firm. And you discovered those that would put principle before career. And that's exactly what Narendra did. Now, I regret he never came into Parliament, because I think he would have been a brilliant MP, and if he was in Parliament now, he'd be coming into government with us as a minister. You know that as well as I do. I regret that, but his was a life well lived, because what he did, he enabled those who got into elected positions to ensure that they had a base of support, a thoroughgoing knowledge of how and understanding of the world, a theoretical development of those ideas, but also that they knew that they had behind them people like Narendra who could support us all the way through. Now, we thought at that point in time the GLC would be a test bed, and that after that, hopefully, we'd secure enough positions with the Parliamentary Labour Party, we'd eventually go into government. That never happened, because we lost the general election in 1983, the Ben Manifesto wasn't implemented. So yes, there's been a little bit of a hiatus and a bit of a gap between us testing those ideas and us now going into government to put them into practice. But I tell you, when we go into government, and it isn't if, it's when we go into government, Narendra will be coming into government with us. Because those same ideas, that same spirit, that same light that he endowed us with during that period, as true comrades, actually will be taken into government. And you know what we'll be doing? We'll be creating that society that he always argued for. The one that's fundamentally more equal. A society where racism will have no place. A society in which will be fundamentally more democratic. But you know what Narendra did as well? His big emphasis was, yes, I campaign on the basis of anti-racism, but you cannot separate racism from class politics. But he made sure we welded them together, because one of the key aspects he always taught us, never let them divide us. And so I suppose in the principle that we'll take into government is Narendra H.Makanji's principle of absolute solidarity.